So this is Grammar, Unit 1, Exercise 7, sentences 3, 4, and 5. So these are the ones that we had done in class. Sorry if we missed you. So looking from left to right, for lunch, Manny made himself a humongous sandwich. We have made as our verb. We have one preposition, for. You have to be careful, right, because this is one of those prepositions that potentially, like to, could be the indirect object. So we have, it's not a particle though, so we can draw our lines. We look at that preposition for. Our object here is for lunch, so that's our prepositional phrase. So we have Manny is a noun phrase. To the right of our verb, we have himself. Remember, if you didn't write these down in class, the reflexive pronouns, myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, oneself, ourselves, themselves, and yourselves. And the reciprocal pronouns, each other and one another, we're always going to label noun phrase 2 or noun phrase 3, depending on where we encounter them, even if they're the same as the subject, which they will be, because this subject is then kind of acting in two places. It could be the subject and the direct object, or the subject and the indirect object, so watch out for those. So, and then we have a humongous sandwich. So noun phrase 2, even though it's the same as Manny, we have to label that noun phrase 2, and then the humongous sandwich, which is different than himself and Manny, is noun phrase 3. So, looking from left to right, for lunch, it's not going to be the indirect object because we've already got a noun phrase that's going to act like that. And anyway, it answers that question, why he made that or when. Either one would result in the same function. It's an adverb. Manny is the doer of the action, so he's our subject. Who or what was made, sorry, transitive verb, that's the sandwich. So the sandwich is going to be our direct object. And to whom or for whom was the sandwich made? That's our indirect object, himself. If you want to draw a line, that's totally fine. You can do that, separate things out. Just make sure you line it up. So if you're not drawing lines, make sure it's real clear what sort of belongs together. So with an indirect object and a direct object, that's pattern 8. Sentence 4, the kids made up a story about Pokemon monsters. So we have our verb, made. Then we have up and about. Second preposition, about, pretty straightforward. That's a prepositional phrase. This one could be more problematic. So when we look at our sentence, the kids and a story belong together. We have to decide, are you constructing something physically? Are you reconciling, right, kind of a figurative construction? Or are you imagining, same kind of concept. It's not a real world kind of construction. And in this case, the kids made up a story. We have sort of that imaginary construction. If you're not sure, you can always move up to before the kids. Up the kids made a story. It falls apart, and so it doesn't work anymore. It's beyond kind of awkward. It becomes meaningless. So going across the top row, kids is a noun phrase. A story is different than the kids. And we already said about Pokemon monsters is a prepositional phrase. So when we look at our sentence, as soon as you have a noun phrase 2, you know you have a transitive verb. And so then in this case, kids are doing the action, so that's the subject. Who or what was made, that's the story. So that's going to be our direct object. About Pokemon monsters is telling us what kind of story. And that means it's an adjective. So you don't necessarily have to write the question in adjective, but you do want to draw your arrow to story, or you want to identify adjective down here, okay? One of these 3 has to be there for you to get full credit, because you have to account for the function. So with a transitive verb and only a direct object, that's pattern 7. So flip it over onto the other side, let's do 5. The teacher wrote a lot of comments in the margin. So if we say, okay, I think my verb is wrote, we have of and in, our prepositions. So in this case, in the margins and of comments, you don't have to worry too much about them being a particle. Remember, if there's a whole noun phrase in between your verb and the preposition, it's not going to belong together unless your sentence is very awkward. And none of these sentences, they may sound a little awkward, but none of them are going to be that problematic in terms, that they're going to have something, inserted in between, at least in Unit 1, inserted in between, the verb, because that's not very good writing there, not clear. So we've taken care of everything preposition-wise, and we found our verbs, so you can draw our lines. So we look at our sentence. The teacher is our first thing, and a lot is our second thing. Don't forget a, an, and the. They can feel like prepositions, but they're not on that list on the back, and that's intentional because a, an, and the are determiners. They tell us we have a noun phrase. So we look at our sentence. We know we have a transitive verb because we have a noun phrase too. The teacher's doing the writing. Who or what was written? It's really a lot. I know that sounds weird because you're like, well, the comments, but that's because of comments tells us what kind of lot we have, and of is one of those, it's one of those prepositions that our brain just kind of absorbs. So we almost don't notice it. We say, you know, it's really the comments. So, and we make a lot in our mind almost the descriptor. So in the margins is where the writing happens, right? Because comments in the margin is not really a different kind of comments than, like, I don't know, comments inside the writing or something. It's just comments are comments are comments. So this isn't going to change the kind of comments if we were to say it describes it. This is really where the comments were written. That's the question. So we draw our arrow to the verb. If you don't really like, you know, the arrow going there, you could always draw the arrow this way and say it's an adverb, right? Or put the question above it, put an adverb, but you have to make sure you do one of those three in order to get full credit. Okay? So with a direct object, even though we've got an adjective and an adverb, really this is the only important thing. It's going to be pattern 7. Okay? So 6, 7, and 8 are on your own. You got a freebie if you watch this one, and I'll see you in class.